Imagine, if you will, the demolition and construction industry as a man, big, strong, tough, determined. But if you look closely, you won't see an unstoppable force of nature. You'll see a body in the advanced stages of multiple organ failure, wheezing under the weight of its own hubris and clinging to life through sheer, stubborn refusal to acknowledge its own mortality. So, with all that in mind, step into the theatre, if you please. Mind the blood. It's time for a proper examination. Let's start with the circulatory system. In any healthy organism, blood flows freely to provide the energy required for movement. In construction, that blood flow is the flow of information, decisions, and capital. However, the industry's arteries are currently so choked with the cholesterol of bureaucracy, it's a miracle that any work gets done at all. Every project is now strangled by layers of red tape so thick they function like a literal blockage. We have safety briefings about safety briefings and digital solutions that require 6 different passwords just to sign off the delivery of aggregates. That's not efficiency, it's a hardening of the pipes. The lifeblood of the site is trapped behind a desk in a regional office while the blokes on the ground wait for a permit that's been stuck in a digital pending tray for the past 3 weeks. Paperwork has become an end in itself. We no longer value building, we value the audit trail of the building. We're more concerned with whether the risk assessment and method statement is formatted correctly than whether the crane is actually stable. It's the ultimate symptom of sclerosis. The system exists only to sustain itself, regardless of whether the limbs it's supposed to serve are actually moving. And while bureaucracy clogs the pipes, the industry is simultaneously suffering from a massive, uncontrolled hemorrhage. We're bleeding experience. The old guard is retiring in droves. And it's not just a trickle, it's a severed artery. We're losing decades of intuition and experience. And when those veterans leave, they take their knowledge with them. We're left with a massive void that can't be filled by a fresh-faced lad with a degree in project management and a shiny new pair of site boots that have never seen a speck of mud. These new recruits are being sent into battle with plenty of theory, but no muscle memory. We're losing our grey matter at the exact moment the world's demanding we build more complex and more sustainable structures than ever before. That brings us to the blood itself. A healthy body produces new red blood cells to replace the old. Yet construction is suffering from chronic, perhaps even terminal anemia. We failed spectacularly to attract the youth. To a 20-year-old today, the industry looks like a relic, a world of 5 a.m. starts in the freezing rain, toxic banter, and a career path that ends in a ruined lower back by the age of 45. We've failed to sell the magic of creation or the catharsis of destruction to a generation that would rather be content creators than site managers. We try to mask the anemia with government-backed recruitment drives, but the reality is still a muddy hole in the ground in Slough in the depths of winter. The iron in our blood is gone. Without new blood, the body becomes sluggish, tired, and increasingly prone to fainting spells when faced with a complex tender. We're an aging population trying to perform in a young man's game, and the fatigue is visible in every delayed project and in every botched demolition. And perhaps the most distressing symptom is the cognitive decline. If a person touches a hot stove and gets burnt, they generally don't do it again. The construction industry, however, seems to have developed a form of corporate dementia. We see the same mistakes repeated on every major infrastructure project with a regularity that suggests a total loss of short-term memory. Costs spiral, deadlines vanish into the ether, and the same contractual disputes that plagued the industry in the 1990s are being litigated today with depressing regularity. We keep using the same lowest price procurement models and then act surprised when the contractor goes bust halfway through the project. It's a failure of the collective memory. The industry wanders, confused and agitated, wondering where it left its spectacles and why the HS2 project has suddenly gone up in price by another £10 billion. Like an Alzheimer's patient, the industry is increasingly disconnected from reality, repeating the same tired stories of on time and on budget while the roof is falling in. In a body, when the heart or lungs stop working, the rest of the system follows. In our industry, the organs are the major firms and the vital supply chains, and we're currently witnessing a wave of multi-organ failure. When a major firm goes bust, it sends a shockwave through the nervous system. The subcontractors, the smaller vital organs, are starved of the oxygen of payment, and they fail in turn. And that's not just a business problem, it's a systemic collapse. We patch it up with pre-pack administrations and government bailouts, the economic equivalent of a temporary pacemaker. But we aren't treating the underlying disease, a fundamental lack of profitability and a toxic obsession with the lowest bid. The body is effectively eating itself to stay alive, sacrificing its extremities to keep the core warm. But eventually, there will be nothing left to burn. And finally, I guess we need to address the patient's temperament. The industry today is like a cantankerous old man who refuses to use a smartphone because the old ways were better. We're set in our ways. The vast majority of sites still operate on methods that would be recognisable to a Victorian stonemason. We resist digitisation. We scoff at sustainability as a box-ticking exercise, and we treat diversity as a chore rather than a necessity for survival. Our patient is sitting in an armchair, shouting at the television, refusing to accept that the world outside has changed. He remembers the old days when you could smoke in the cab and health and safety was just a suggestion. But those days are gone, and his refusal to adapt is making him a pariah. He's out of touch, out of breath, and rapidly running out of time. So, what is the outlook for the patient? If we continue with the current course of treatment, which largely consists of a bit of ibuprofen and a hope that the housing market doesn't crash entirely, the prognosis is terminal. We'll see an industry that is a hollowed out shell, reliant on foreign expertise and dwindling resources, incapable of building the future because it's too busy living in the past. The cure needs to be radical. It requires a total transfusion of talent, a bypass of the bureaucratic blockages, and perhaps a bit of tough love regarding how we manage risk and reward. We need to stop pretending that the patient is just a bit under the weather and acknowledge that we are, in fact, in the intensive care unit. Until we admit that the industry is sick, we haven't got a hope in hell of ever making it healthy again.